Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome to my 25-26 Premier League predictions, where today I'm going to be predicting from 20th all the way up until 1st what I think the Premier League table will look like come the end of next season.
No question about it, I am ready to get hurt again.
Now, of course, as we know, the Premier League has always been wildly unpredictable. I mean, last season we had teams like Nottingham Forest fighting for European spots, while teams like Manchester United and Spurs were fighting to get out of the relegation zone. The league is never easy to predict, but despite that, I will be giving my best attempt. And of course, you guys know the draw by now. Make sure to put your predictions down below, just because if you can judge my predictions, I should be able to judge yours.
It's a joke.
But jokes aside, let's jump straight into the predictions. And as you can see, in big old 2025, we have a tier list set up. Now, we do have subcategories here. As you can see, we've kind of got mid-table positions, relegation, all that kind of stuff, along with the 20 Premier League teams. Now, I do think it is fit that we do start off with the relegation teams, all three of them. Now, of course, as we know, in the last two Premier League seasons, it's been very, very rough, as all three teams to have gotten promoted have been the three teams to get relegated. The Premier League has had a huge kind of gap in quality there, where it's been very difficult for the promoted teams to perform. And you know what? I hate to start it off like that, but I do think I will be putting Sunderland in 20th place here. Look, I've been a huge fan of some of the signings that they've made. I think Granit Xhaka in 2025 playing for a team like Sunderland in the Premier League, it feels like football is healing a tiny bit here.
I use the word horny.
But unfortunately, I do think that they've been a bit wasteful when it comes to some of their signings. As I said, don't get me wrong, they've been great players, but 5 of their brand new signings could potentially be gone for a month or two this season to represent African nations at the African Cup of Nations. And I do feel like they could struggle during that time period. I mean, it could potentially be 4 to 8 games where they are missing 5 players throughout various positions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think they could struggle from that. Look, I don't think they'll struggle that much now that Job Bellingham has left them. I do think that financially they could seriously benefit from that, but saying that they have put it towards players that could be unavailable for a month or two, I think Sunderland will struggle here. In terms of 19th place, I really don't want to have to do it, but I'm going to put another promoted team here.
It can't go on like this, can it?
It can.
I'm going for Leeds United. Now, once again, as a United fan, I'm excited to see a player like Dan James back in the Premier League. I think they've got some exciting players. I think they've got some exciting young attackers. I do think, though, from what we've seen so far in the transfer window, they haven't quite bulked up the way I think they should if they do want to stay in the Premier League. They've lost the likes of Firpo in defence and a few other defensive players that I think they really could struggle from. And as I said, I don't think their squad is bad, but I think it was good in the Championship. I just don't think it will quite translate over to the Premier League. And although we've still got a few weeks left of the transfer window, if they want to stay in the Prem, I think they still need to do quite a lot more. In terms of the third team to go down, once again, I don't want to be that guy, but I think it will be Burnley here.
Sorry.
Look, I think, once again, defensively, that is where Scott Parker was super strong in the Championship last season. And although they've kept the majority of that defense, and they've put Kyle Walker in there, one of the best actors of our generation, unfortunately, losing Trafford to Manchester City as a goalkeeper, I think that's a big loss to them. And I just think in terms of attack, I'm just not really seeing who will be scoring the goals for them against other Premier League opposition. As I said, I think they've got a decent squad, but they have a lot of bulking up to do. Now, jumping into the teams that will just miss out on relegation, I almost put them in that zone, but I am going for Wolves here. Look, I think they've lost some big names this transfer window, the likes of Cunha, their best attacker, the likes of Aït-Nouri, in my opinion, their best defender to Manchester City. They brought in the likes of Arias, who did really well for Fluminense at the Club World Cup. At the end of the day, though, once again, they were horrific last season in the Premier League, and I don't think their squad has improved compared to last year. It's definitely gone down, so I can't give them a better performance than what they were last year. In terms of another team that could be around that kind of area, I'm going to go for Bournemouth here, I think.
Fairy dust. It doesn't exist.
Look, once again, much like Wolves, I think they just lost a lot of top players compared to last year. I mean, their whole defense was dismantled. They've lost Kepa as a goalkeeper, Kirkes to Liverpool. They've lost Huijsen to Real Madrid, Zabani potentially to PSG. Their entire defense has been dismantled. Although I do like their attack, I think they've got some phenomenal attackers. Once again, they've been hit massively, and I do see them struggling, to be honest with you. In terms of another team, maybe around that zone, I'm sorry, Everton, I'm going to put you there.
They do this
every year.
Now, I do think once again, all three teams in this category could be totally interchangeable. One redeeming thing for Everton is the fact that they've got David Moyes. I really do like him as a coach. I think he brings the best out of Everton. But let's also not forget that Everton will be playing in a new stadium this season, no more Goodison Park. And I do think it will take time to adjust, although I do like Barry as a striker from Villarreal. I think that he potentially could be very exciting for them in terms of attack. It's been a while since they've had a top striker in there. Everton over the last 2-3 years, they've been around just outside the relegation zone, and they need to start proving a point with results before I say anything different about them.
A wee bit naughty at the end there, so just watch yourself.
14th place, I'm going to go for West Ham United. Now, unfortunately, looking at West Ham, I just don't think Graham Potter is a good fit as a coach. I just think that it's a total mismatch between team and manager. Look, they've brought in the likes of Doif and Kyle Walker-Peters into the squad. I just don't think that's enough quality to bring to the team for them to have radical changes. They weren't great in the Prem last year. Obviously, they've lost Mohamed Kudus to Tottenham Hotspurs, a major attacker for them. Unfortunately, once again, there are just so many missing puzzle pieces in this team that need to be fixed. And I do think that the puzzle maker, Graham Potter, once again, unfortunately, is the wrong man for the job. Also, in terms of this kind of position, I have to go for Brentford here. Let me just recount again. 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. Okay, I'm just making sure in 13th place, it is Brentford. As we know, they lost their coach, Thomas Frank, to Tottenham Hotspurs. They've lost Norgard to Arsenal in the midfield, and Mbeumo to Manchester United, potentially Visa as well. We will see where he ends up going. I just don't think Brentford kind of have the firepower without Thomas Frank. I think people underestimate how important he's been to their recent successes.
He was special.
And I don't think the likes of Keith Andrews as a coach. I mean, he is the only one of that coaching staff who didn't go to Spurs with Thomas Frank. He was a set-piece coach, and that has to say something, the fact that he was the only man left behind. At the end of the day, I think this will show how important Thomas Frank was to the club, and losing so many key players once again, I think it's going to hit them hard. Now, jumping into that next category, kind of 8th place to 12th place. This one is slightly trickier. I think it really is interchangeable. But I think I'm going to go for the likes of... who do I go for here? I'm going to go for the likes of Fulham. Unfortunately, I just don't think they've really improved their squad off of last season so far. I do think they've got a very decent team. But yeah, as I said, so far this transfer window, I've been very, very unimpressed with what they've done so far. I don't think they've strengthened well. I do think other teams around them have done so.
A bit shit, but that's how it is.
And a good example of, once again, another team that hasn't changed too much. I've gone for Crystal Palace here. I do think they could be quite tired compared to last season because now they do have European football, but I have put them above Fulham just because I do think their squad is better. Although they haven't made major improvements, the current FA Cup winners, once again, they've got a very, very good squad. The fact that they still have the likes of Eze in their team, I think, is almost as good as a brand new signing. Once again, just as a team, I do like Crystal Palace. They're very electric. They're very fast. They're a very well-oiled machine. Under Glasner, I really do like them. And they have potential to be a lot higher than what I've just put them. Also kind of in that category, though, I think I'm going to go for the likes of Brighton. Now, once again, another team that I don't think has improved this transfer window compared to last season. They've lost the likes of João Pedro, their main striker, Estupinan in defense. They've lost a few other players, and I don't quite think they've found adequate replacements. But the reason I've put them over a team like Crystal Palace is because although Brighton have brought in some unknown players this transfer window, I say unknown players because Brighton have always been brilliant at scouting.
That is bloody lovely.
And they've proven that they can take the unknown and turn them into Premier League quality players and sell them off for a massive profit. And I do think once again, since they've proven their point in the past before, I have to put the Seagulls over the Eagles. I think they've still got a decent squad. I do think they need to improve though. They've lost some major players, but I do think they should at least be around this category. Now also kind of in this position, once again, maybe I could kind of get judged here, but I'm putting Nottingham Forest in what I believe is 12, 11, 10, 9th place.
Man, I'm gonna break my monitor, I swear!
Also a team that fought for Europe last season, definitely overperformed. I don't see them maybe being as good this season, so you know what, they could almost be at the end of this list. I think losing the likes of Anthony Elanga to Newcastle United could be a major loss for them. I don't see Chris Wood being as good this upcoming season, but you know what, keeping Morgan Gibbs-White I mean, once again, that is almost like a brand new transfer for this team. Once again, they kind of proved a point last year, and I think bringing in players like Igor Jesus from Botafogo, for example, he could be very exciting in the attack for them. Overall, I do like this Forest team. I think they have proven a point. I don't think they'll be quite as good as last season, so you know what? I might end up moving them here to 11th place, just above Fulham, but once again, after Crystal Palace. I do think ultimately they will kind of be in that category. And in 8th place, once again, you see we've got so many big dogs left, and honestly, all of these 8 teams could kind of fight for a Champions League spot.
I prefer really not to speak.
But I have gone for the likes of Newcastle United. And I'm saying this purely because of one reason. Yes, I know Elanga has just joined them, but they potentially could lose Alexander Isak, a 20-goal a season kind of striker. Now, don't get me wrong, in the last 2-3 years, this project with Newcastle United, they've done some phenomenal things. But if you lose your 20-goal a season kind of striker, I just don't see them getting anyone better than him.
Well, this is going to hurt like a mother.
Yes, they could get the money and they could bring in some fantastic players. Maybe just for conversation's sake, someone like Ollie Watkins could join them. But at the end of the day, I just don't see them getting someone as good as him. They have tried to bring in some other players this transfer window, like Ekitike and a few others, but they just haven't had that pull. And I am a tiny bit worried for them, and I think they might struggle this season. But of course, jumping into 7th place, which that's where the conversation of Europe kind of starts, potentially for the Conference League. Now, this one is very, very tricky, but I think I'm going to go for Aston Villa here. Now, I know people are talking about the fact that I've still got Spurs and Man United there. Don't worry, they're coming very soon.
You can't keep getting away with it!
But looking at Aston Villa, don't get me wrong, under Unai Emery, I really do back him as a coach. I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job. There are talks about Emi Martinez potentially leaving, the likes of Ollie Watkins leaving. And I do think if those players leave, especially Ollie Watkins, I do think Villa could struggle here. Now, a huge reason to why I put them in 7th place and not slightly higher is because they also haven't improved that much this transfer window, in my opinion. While I do think teams that are around them kind of have. So I do think just due to competition, I do think they could struggle. And in 6th place, just one position above them, I've gone for my team, Man United. And once again, they could very much be in this category. Many people will try to put them in that category.
Go to bits. Becoming emotional now,
but I do think they will be in 6th place. I think people underestimate how much injuries impacted Man United last season. I think especially in terms of defense, but I do think with underrated talent like even Aiden Heaven in defense this year, I think we could see a major change for Man United if they do stay injury free. And I think a lot of the attacking ability kind of dependent on Bruno Fernandes. But now with the likes of Mbeumo, Cunha, and it looks like a striker could join the team, I've got a lot more faith in Manchester United's ability. And mark my words, if Manchester United stay injury-free, they could compete for a European spot. I'm not saying top 4, top 5 Champions League spots, but I could see them in the conversation of Europa League or Conference League. But of course, now jumping into those Champions League spots, I'm sorry Spurs, your time has come and I have to put you in 5th place. And maybe even putting you in a Champions League spot is generous.
I don't know where to start.
But I will say this. I am a huge fan of Thomas Frank. As I said, I really do give him a lot of credit for Brentford's success. And I do think ultimately he is a manager who will be able to adapt a team quite well. I do think once again, Postecoglou with Spurs last season, much like Man United, people underestimate how much they were impacted by injuries. So if they stay injury-free, they've now got the likes of Mohamed Kudus in their attack. They wanted Morgan Gibbs-White. That didn't quite happen. I do think once again, they have slightly strengthened their team. It does look like Heung-min Son could leave, which would be a major blow in my opinion. But at the end of the day, I do think Spurs have a decent team. Maybe they will get tied with Champions League next season. That's a real possibility. But whether you want to put them here, United there, or even Aston Villa in the mix, I do think all interchangeable. It is very, very likely. But of course, jumping into our final 4, I do think 3rd and 4th place will be between our 2 London clubs here. And I am just going for Chelsea in 4th place.
What?
Now, they are the current Club World Cup winners, and I do think that they could have a serious run now that they finally have a top striker with João Pedro. I cannot remember when last Chelsea had a decent striker. Look at them. I think that could be a huge difference maker for them. I think this season Chelsea could be on serious fire, especially if Cole Palmer kind of catches form once again. I know he is cold Palmer, but he can be on fire when he wants to. Jokes aside, I think Chelsea have a very, very decent team here, and they could kind of rival Arsenal for that third place spot, but I'm going to put it down to Arsenal for one main reason, and you know the name, Viktor Gyökeres. They've now got the Swedish striker, in my opinion, the best attacker in Europe over the last 2 years. We've seen the numbers, he's been vicious, he will be a physical dominance in the box for Arsenal, and they have been missing that number 9 for years now, and they could potentially have their man, and the fact that he's wearing that 14 of Thierry Henry once again, I do think Pedro versus Viktor Gyökeres, I do think whoever performs better between those two, I think that could be a major decider in potentially challenging for the title one day.
I don't know what you're drinking in that tea, you know. But yo!
But of course, going to the final two, we all knew it could potentially come down to this. Man City versus Liverpool. Now, looking at both teams, they've both made fantastic transfers. We look at the likes of Man City, although they lost Kevin De Bruyne. Maybe the best midfielder of our generation, or at least in their conversation. They've now brought in the likes of Rangers, who I really do rate. They've got the likes of Cherki, Ait Nuri. They've got Trafford now, at least as a backup goalkeeper. Maybe he'll challenge for first. And looking at Liverpool, once again, they've brought in Ekitike. They've spoken about the likes of Alexander Isak. They've got Wirtz, Kirkes, Frimpong. I mean, I'm sure I've missed a name or two there, but I mean, what a fantastic kind of lineup they've brought in. And the fact that they've kept a lot of their top names, as we know, they've got the likes of Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk signed contracts. Yes, they lost the likes of Trent, but I don't think they'll hinder them that much this season.
Gracias.
I think between these two teams, it is going to be a real fight. Could Liverpool win the Premier League back-to-back? They've done really well under Arne Slot, obviously winning in his first season. But I think I have to go for Man City here, and I'm putting it down to one reason. Yes, I know they had that awful spell last year for 2 months. But other than those 2 months, Man City have dominated the Premier League for the last 10 years. And to be honest with you, I don't think it would be wise to underestimate them at this point. I do see Liverpool potentially winning the league next season, but for some reason my gut does say Man City here, so I guess only time will tell. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for my Premier League predictions for the 25-26 season. Of course, if you've got any disagreements, let me know what your predictions are down below. Please do like, please do subscribe. It helps the channel out massively, and I would love to grow it even more. But this has been Finn, FYNN. Until next time, cheers.